Dr. Terry. This video is going to show some good stretches that you can do to help for your low back, mid back, and just overall just stretching you and opening you up. Shannon will be giving me cues.
All right, so we are going to be lying on your backs, and we're going to start with just simple single knees to chest, double knees to chest. The first one is just single knees to chest. So I'm going to have Terry just pull one of her knees. Grab it. You can either, I would start grabbing behind the knee, safer for your knee. If you feel like you're healthy and your knees don't bother you, no pain, you can grab by your shin. So all she's doing here, she's pulling that knee into her to help open up that back of the leg into your glutes. Now, with this, you can, depending on your tightness level, you can have this supported leg bent with that foot planted. If that doesn't feel like much, you can take this leg and you can just lengthen it all the way down on that mat. So not only is she getting this nice stretch through her back of the leg, hamstring, glute area, she's also getting this awesome stretch through that hip flexor down through this quad here. So the thing is, what I don't want to see is when your leg is down, if it's straight, if you decide to straighten it, watch that it's not completely bent and everything's changing in your spine, your neck, your shoulders are up. That's kind of a good indicator that that's probably not the best time for you to straighten that leg. So if that feels like too much, obviously just go back to bent knee, planting that foot. And another thing here, yes, you want to try to stay a little bit in that neutral spine, but you want to try to find a little bit of the opening in that lower back. So you're going to feel a little bit kind of lengthening through that lower back, which obviously comes all the way out through that hip and that glute. And then hold that, I don't know, 5-10 seconds, and then she can just gently lower that foot back down. And then she can go the other side. So she's going to pull that leg in. And again, one side is going to feel definitely tighter than the other, depending on where you're tight. And then just watch, what I want to show you is, watch that when you pull one leg in, that you're not unsquaring your hips and your pelvis. So watch that when you pull that knee in, just show the hip lift a little bit, Terry. So see how she's kind of hiked up. This is lifted. Nothing is square through her pelvis. Not an ideal position. So she's going to try to draw that hip down a little bit more so it's really in alignment with that right hip, and then she gets that good stretch. And then moving on, she can go ahead and stretch that leg nice and long down on that mat. So that is the single leg stretch. Moving into double knees to chest stretch, all you do is double knees as opposed to single. She's going to pull both knees into her, grabbing behind her knees on top, shin area, whatever you feel is comfortable and good for you. It's the same thing. You just have both knees in, lengthening. So when she's here, what I want you to be conscious of is that when you pull your knees into you, you don't really want to try to lift your hips and your pelvis so much. So go ahead and kind of tuck your hips up a little bit, Terry. Yeah, so that you want to try to prevent from happening. You want to try to anchor that lower back down into the mat because you're trying to open up your lower back to help that stretch, but also lengthening the hamstrings and the glutes to feel those guys stretch. Okay, so that's double knees to chest. If you feel like this is probably not a good one for you, work up to it. You can start with just the single knee to chest and then move into the double knee to chest. Okay, so Terry is going to actually stay on her back and she's going to do happy baby pose. So if you've done yoga, you probably have found this stretch relatively at the end of a workout. It feels really good. So she's going to actually bend her knees into her. She's going to take her feet up towards the ceiling and she's going to flex her feet. From there, she's going to open her knees and her feet. So they're kind of about hip width, shoulder width apart, not too wide. And she's going to reach up and she's going to grab onto the outsides of her feet. So pinky toe area on that. And then from there, she wants to think of pulling her knees towards her armpits to stretch through the hips and the lower back, inner thighs, relatively this whole region here. It feels really, really good. Obviously, if you cannot get to this position, just leave it until you find a little bit more flexibility in your body. So if that feels good to you, I would stay there. If you want a little bit added movement to the exercise, you can kind of just take this and rock side to side. Really feels good on your lower back, massaging it out a little bit, opening you up even further. And just hold it what feels comfortable to you, 15, 30 seconds. And then go ahead and release those legs. So that's happy baby. Let's do moving on into butterfly pose. So you see butterfly stretch in a lot of avenues. So Terry's going to actually sit herself up. She's going to sit with her, the bottom or soles of her feet together in front of her. And she's just going to actually rest her hands, hold her ankles, your feet, and then she's going to stretch from there. Now, this exercise is tricky because what I find people do is when they get into this stretch, their lower backs are so tight that they can't even sit themselves up tall. So they end up in this nice rounded position, which honestly in the end is not the most ideal. So what happens is they sink into their backs, they pull in their hip flexors, and they don't get the stretch how it is supposed to feel. So what happens is I'm going to actually put her, I'm just going to show something. So if you have a bolster, a pillow, a box like what we have here, I'm going to have Terry actually sit on top of it. So for really tight men, I love to elevate them because what happens here is she is able to now find the lift out of her lower back. Okay, so yeah, she might not be able to grab her ankles because that's going to force her into a rounded back. So she can kind of just rest her hands on her calves, but focusing on the lifting up out of that spine. Okay, so that's, I just wanted to show you if you are super, super tight in the lower back, the inner thighs that prevents you from sitting up tall. So Terry, I'm going to take the box out from you. We're going to go actually back into how you were. And she's going to go back into that butterfly stretch. And she's just going to use her arms to help lift herself up. I have clients kind of put their arms, their forearms on their elbows and use their arms to help push their knees wide to open themselves up through their inner thighs and their hips. And you've seen some people too on this exercise to have a little bit of rocking. So you can kind of rock, whatever feels comfortable is fine. So like I said, this one you will hold probably for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. Just make it last. Make the stretch feel good and comfortable. Don't just hop into it, it hurts, and then jump right out of it. That honestly won't help much in the end. You want to be able to stretch and breathe through it. Great, okay. So moving on to, I'm going to bring Terry up onto her knees and we're going to do cat stretch, child's pose. Okay, so cat stretch is another great one for your back, opening everything up. Okay, so you're going to be on your knees, about hip width apart, and then she's going to have flat hands. If you have wrist issues, you can go up making fists, how Terry is here. So if you notice the wrist angle is nice and long, so it's not putting pressure onto your wrist, that's a good cue to use. So she's going to go back onto her hands, flat hands, and she's going to make sure that everything is nice and neutral in her spine. So from the crown of the head down her back and then out her tailbone is looking nice and long. So cat stretch is a yummy, awesome stretch for the back. So she's going to start to drop her tailbone towards the floor as she drops her head down. You want to imagine that your gaze is coming up towards your rib cage and the belly, up towards the ceiling, opening up this back. And then she's going to unfold her spine back out into that neutral spine. And I'm going to have Terry actually find a little bit more of a stretch through her. So sit your hips, stick your booty out a little bit. Yeah. So just getting a little bit more length out of that lower back. And she's going to do that again. So she's going to drop her tail. She's going to drop her head. She's going to find this nice rounded, we like to call it a C curve in your spine, mimicking the shape of a C. And then she's going to exhale as she comes out into a neutral spine. Well, let's just do a couple more. So as she rolls her spine up towards the ceiling, she is trying to push up out of these hands because that's going to help open up her upper back even further. And then she's going to exhale as she comes into a neutral spine. She has one more time. So you can inhale as you round your back. Tailbone is anchoring more towards the floor. And then exhaling your air as you come back into that flat back. Great. Okay. So she is going to bring her hips back towards her heels, moving into the next stretch called child's pose, which is an awesome stretch to finish an exercise with. Start in the morning when you wake up, just to open your body up. So she is sitting back on her heels with her tailbone. Her arms are reaching nice and long in front of her. Now, if you have bad knees, I would probably leave this exercise out, or this stretch out. It will probably put more pressure on your knees than anything and not allow you to feel any kind of a stretch here. So where Terry is, she's open with her knees a little bit, which is fine. Another way you can do it is keeping your knees open, but drawing your feet, yes, open further to help lengthen a little bit more through that back. So I like to add a little bit of a side twist to child's poses because it gets a little bit of the stretch through the rib cage and up through that side, especially if you're working on any kind of side bending, side planks. So you can take your hands and draw them towards one side of the mat, the floor. So it takes you into a little bit of this kind of shape of a banana with your upper back. And just hold that for a few seconds. And then she's going to climb or walk her fingers over to the other side. And now the thing is here is when she's doing this, what's happening is her hips aren't moving. So she's not twisting her hips or her pelvis to do this. It's strictly from the side body, the rib cage, up through that shoulder, out through those arms. And then she's going to come back to the center. And watch when you guys come out of child's pose that you don't just pop on up. You're going to gently roll your spine up and think one vertebrae at a time, lifting yourself up so nothing is too sudden.